Warning! This is Data and Dissonance, and as always, this isn't your friendly neighborhood NPR broadcast. What you're about to hear contains strong language, biting humor, and takes that don't come with a trigger warning. They come with a reminder that the First Amendment still exists. We're going to talk about power, corruption, and the elites who think you're too dumb to notice when they rig the game. If you came here for bedtime stories, turn on PBS. If you came here for unfiltered truth mixed with sarcasm, sharp enough to cut through a CNN chyron, you're in the right place. Buckle up, because for the next half hour, we're pulling no punches, cracking jokes even in the dark corners, and doing what the mainstream can't, telling you what's really going on.
Foreign policy brinkmanship in Venezuela. A president floating the idea of sending National Guard troops into New Orleans like it's a campaign rally stunt, and the Chief Justice of the United States trying to convince America that the courts aren't political while the whole country laughs nervously in unison. That's your week in a nutshell. On one hand, we've got warnings that America could stumble into a guerrilla war in South America. Because apparently we didn't learn a damn thing from the last time we thought limited strikes stayed limited. On the other, Trump's talking about rolling tanks into Bourbon Street, which is either Law and Order cosplay or a Netflix pitch gone wrong. And just when you think the circus has enough acts, John Roberts steps up like a dad telling his kids to stop fighting in the back seat. Except the back seat is Congress, and they've already lit the car on fire. This is Data and Dissonance, and tonight we're pulling the thread on all of it. Let's meet the crew. First up, Brian. The man who believes foreign intervention should mean grilling brisket at his neighbor's house, not stumbling into a guerrilla war in South America. He's got a red hat, a louder voice, and a running tab on how many times CNN has cried since 2016. Next, Rachel. The independent who doesn't buy the show no matter who's selling tickets. She can smell political theater before the first act, and she's here with the receipts and the eyebrow raise that makes politicians wish they'd stayed home. Over on my left, Daniel, our conspiracy cartographer. Give him a headline about Venezuela or the National Guard, and he'll draw you a flowchart that ends with Davos billionaires and a surveillance drone parked over your house. He's got the yarn, the caffeine, and just enough paranoia to keep the NSA tuned in. And rounding out the table, Skylar, our progressive firebrand who thinks justice shouldn't depend on campaign donors, that clean air and worker rights aren't punchlines, and who's already got a reusable cup ready in case Trump tries to ration water in New Orleans next. This episode of Data and Dissonance is brought to you by the Caleb Rourke Thriller series. The Covenant Protocol and the Prophet Directive are out now, and Book 3, Black Echo Rising, drops this December. If you like your fiction laced with conspiracies, global power plays, and more twists than a CNN spin cycle, grab your copies on Amazon today and join Caleb Rourke on a ride that makes DC look tame. And while you're at it, fuel that reading binge with our Data and Dissonance merch line. We've got the coffee blends to match your mood, High Lakes Light Roast for the early birds, Rock Creek Medium Roast for the steady hands, and Bitterroot Dark French Roast for the folks who like their brew darker than Epstein's flight logs. Pair that with our Data and Dissonance tumblers, because nothing says I see through the narrative like sipping coffee from a mug the mainstream media wishes didn't exist. And if you really want to make a statement, we've got the shirts, patriotic, Gen X bold, and designed to get you side eyes at Whole Foods and high fives at Cracker Barrel. Grab it all at dataanddissonance.printify.me. Every sip, every shirt, every tumbler helps us keep speaking truth and stirring thought. Let's start south of the border. And no, not the Taco Bell drive-thru. The U.S. just carried out a strike on a Venezuelan drug trafficking vessel, and now everyone from Pentagon officials to former Biden-era brass is warning that this could spiral into a full-blown guerrilla war. Think Bay of Pigs meets Afghanistan, but with more oil and fewer exit strategies. On one side, Trump's team says this is about sending a message to Maduro and cracking down on cartels. On the other, critics are screaming that we're one limited strike away from turning Caracas into the next Kabul. So here's the question. Is this decisive leadership, reckless intervention, or or just another chapter in America's long-running addiction to wars we can't win? The experts are split between bold leadership and, oh crap, we're about to star in Vietnam too. Caribbean Boogaloo. So, panel. Strength, stupidity, or just another week in DC? Brian, is this strike smart strength or step one to a quagmire?
It's smart strength, Artie. You don't let cartels think they can ship poison into our country without consequences. One strike sends the message. We're watching, and we're not afraid to hit back. That's deterrence. Now, if some pencil pusher at the Pentagon turns this into a full-blown regime change fantasy, that's when you get a quagmire. But as long as it's about protecting our border and hammering traffickers, this is exactly what America First means.
Brian, you say one strike sends a message, but knowing DC, they'll probably send 12, forget who the target was, and then hire Halliburton to rebuild it. At least with Trump, the message comes with a signature in Sharpie. What's the guardrail to avoid mission creep?
Guardrail's simple, keep it narrow. Target cartels tied to our border, don't get sucked into Maduro's circus. The danger is letting the same people who turned Iraq into a 20-year mess start whispering about stability operations. If you hear the word stabilization, it's already too late. Pull the plug before the swamp sells you another war.
Yeah, because nothing says stability like dropping bombs on a place where stability already left the chat. We should make a DC dictionary. Stabilization means war. Surgical strike means open heart surgery with a chainsaw, and limited engagement means your kids will enlist before it's over. So bottom line, what's America First in Venezuela?
Protect our people, protect our border, punish cartels, and then get out. That's it. No trillion-dollar adventures, no nation building. If Maduro wants another taste, fine, we'll hit again. But America First means strength without stupidity.
So hit, quit, and don't text back. Sounds like Trump's foreign policy is basically Tinder with missiles. Rachel, is this accountability or just political theater?
It looks like both. On paper, targeting a cartel vessel is accountability. But the way it's being paraded around, the timing, the leaks, the chest thumping, makes it look like theater. The survivors of cartel violence deserve more than a soundbite. Accountability is action plus results, not headlines plus applause.
Yeah, Congress loves applause. Half those guys clap for themselves when they find the light switch in the bathroom. I'm convinced if you put a camera in front of them, they'd declare war on Canada just for the retweets. What metrics tell you it's time to stop before it spirals?
No boots on the ground. No ballooning budgets, no sudden new objectives. If this was one strike, explain it, show what it accomplished, and stop. If leaders can't summarize the mission in one sentence, it's not a mission anymore. It's an excuse.
One sentence? Rachel, you're asking too much. Half these politicians can't order lunch in under 3 paragraphs. They'd explain a turkey sandwich like it's a classified briefing. How do independents see this?
With suspicion. And rightfully so. We've been burned by quick, clean operations too many times. Moderates want security, but they don't want another forever war. The real test isn't the strike. It's what comes after. If DC shows restraint, people will accept it. If not, trust erodes even more.
Trust in DC? Rachel, that's like trusting your dog to guard the brisket. You know exactly how that ends. With excuses and an empty plate. Daniel, what's the part we're not being told?
The part we're not being told is who profits. Cartels move billions. You think that money stops in Caracas? No, it flows through banks, Shellcore, and Intel networks. Epstein didn't kill himself, and wars don't start themselves. Someone's cashing checks off this chaos, and they're not living in Venezuela.
Daniel, sometimes I think your corkboard has more pins than Congress has. IQ points. But I'll admit, when the money trail starts, it usually ends in Manhattan or Switzerland, not Caracas. Are the warnings about guerrilla war real or just cover?
Both. Yes, a guerrilla war is what happens when you destabilize a country, but it's also cover. Politicians can shrug later and say, "See, we warned you. It's all a script." They cry limited strike, then act surprised when it spirals. That's not an accident, it's choreography.
Choreography? So Venezuela's basically dancing with the stars. But the stars are generals, and the prize is a 20-year deployment. Can't wait for that season finale. What's on your red string watch list?
Temporary bases that never close. Emergency funding bills with boring titles, but billions tucked inside. Resignations in energy firms, and the classic naming the mission. Once you hear Operation Liberty, buckle up, because it won't be liberty for us.
Operation Liberty? Yeah, nothing says freedom like being stuck in the jungle while lobbyists cash checks in D.C. We should start naming missions honestly. Operation We Screwed Up Again has a nice ring. Skylar, necessary or reckless?
Both. Necessary because cartels are killing people. Reckless because America thinks missiles fix everything. You don't bomb your way out of systemic rot. You choke off cartel money, hold banks accountable, and fix demand at home. Missiles make headlines. Solutions save lives.
Skylar, don't give Congress ideas. If they hear solutions save lives, they'll file a resolution to bomb the word solutions. What would a responsible plan look like?
Target the money pipelines, sanction elites laundering cash, punish corporations complicit in corruption, expand interdiction with neighboring countries, and invest in prevention here at home. Fighting cartels with bombs alone is like curing alcoholism by bombing a brewery.
That's actually not bad policy. At least you'd stop Bud Light from making new commercials. But point taken, you can't missile your way to sobriety. What's your red line?
Open-ended deployments. Once Congress starts writing blank checks for regional stability, the mission's already lost. If there's no clear end state, there's no mission. Just profiteering. That's when America loses, and the people paying the price aren't in Congress, they're in uniform.
Skylar, you're telling me Congress doesn't pay the price? Shocking. Next, you'll tell me lobbyists don't vacation in Caracas. Oh wait, they don't. They prefer the Caymans. President Trump has floated the idea of sending National Guard troops into New Orleans to deal with crime. Problem is, crime rates are actually down, and local leaders are pushing back hard. So is this about safety, or is it about headlines? Because nothing screams law and order like rolling Humvees down Bourbon Street past a bunch of guys in plastic beads. Let's break this one open. Brian, is this law and order leadership or political theater?
It's leadership, Artie. Trump has always stood for protecting communities, and New Orleans isn't exempt. Now sure, crime stats say it's down, but ask the people who live there if they feel safer. Numbers don't mean anything when you're scared to walk your street. Sometimes the mere presence of the guard is enough to remind criminals that there's a line they can't cross. That's not theater. That's deterrence.
Brian, deterrence is one thing, but I don't think Bourbon Street needs tanks to stop a pickpocket. Last thing New Orleans needs is soldiers trying to figure out whether a parade float is hostile. But crime is down. Doesn't that undercut the case?
Statistics can be manipulated. Local politicians love to cook the books and declare victory, but everyone knows the city has serious crime issues. The Guard isn't about numbers, it's about confidence. If Trump thinks putting boots on the ground sends a message that New Orleans won't tolerate lawlessness, then that's a win. And let's be real, the people who scream authoritarian are the same ones who were fine with cities being on fire in 2020.
Brian, careful. If you say the word books in New Orleans, half the audience will think you're talking about gambling. And you're right. Politicians cook the numbers so well they could open a Cajun restaurant. So, bottom line, Guard in New Orleans, good idea?
Yes, if it's temporary and targeted. We're not talking about martial law, we're talking about law and order. Trump is showing he's serious about keeping cities safe. That's the kind of leadership people respect.
Temporary and targeted, huh? That's also how Bourbon Street describes happy hour. Let's just hope the Guard isn't trying to arrest drunk tourists for crimes against karaoke. Rachel, law and order or political theater?
Political theater, 100%. New Orleans has seen bad times, but crime is trending down and locals don't want soldiers patrolling their neighborhoods. This isn't about safety, it's about optics. Trump loves a big visual. Soldiers, flags, tough talk. But leadership is about listening to communities, not staging a reality show. This feels like a PR stunt more than a public safety measure.
So you're saying the Guard is just there for B-roll? Wouldn't be the first time politicians use troops as extras. At least give them union pay if they're going to be props. But Rachel, some residents do say they'd feel safer. Isn't that worth something?
Of course, perception matters, but policy should be based on reality, not fear. If crime is down, then the solution is to keep supporting what's working. Better policing, community investment, not turning the city into a military zone. The Guard isn't trained for day-to-day community policing. They're trained for combat. That mismatch can create more problems than it solves.
Yeah, last thing you want is a guardsman mistaking a Mardi Gras float for a riot. Imagine a Humvee following a marching band down Canal Street. Talk about the world's most awkward parade. So what's your alternative to the Guard?
Support local police with resources, invest in community programs, and keep the focus on long-term solutions. The Guard is a Band-Aid for a wound that's already healing. What New Orleans needs is trust and investment, not Humvees on Decatur Street.
Trust and investment, huh? Sounds great, but DC would rather invest in anything but communities. You ask for resources, and they'll send you a study, a subcommittee, and maybe a tote bag. Daniel, what's the real play here?
The real play? Control. Whenever the government sends troops into American streets, it's about flexing power. Crime stats are just the excuse. You normalize the Guard in one city. Suddenly, it's easier to justify rolling them into others. Today, it's New Orleans. Tomorrow, it's Dallas, then Chicago. Before you know it, you've got federalized law and order everywhere. That's not security, that's soft martial law.
So in your head, New Orleans is just the pilot episode of America the Occupation. Great. Can't wait for the season finale where Daniel turns out to be right and the popcorn's laced with fluoride. But isn't Trump just responding to public concern?
Public concern is always the excuse. That's how you get people to accept losing rights. Tell them it's for their safety. Ask yourself, why New Orleans? Why now? Because it makes a great photo op. A city known for parties, parades, and chaos. Drop the Guard in there, and you've got images that scream strong leadership. It's marketing disguised as policy.
Daniel, you've got a point. If the White House wants strong images, they could just rent a marching band. Cheaper, fewer lawsuits, and less chance of a bayonet poking a tourist. So your red string take?
Watch the narrative. If media suddenly hypes crime in other cities, it's the rollout. New Orleans is the test balloon. If people swallow it, expect Guard deployments to spread. This isn't about New Orleans crime rates. It's about normalizing military presence in civilian life.
So we're beta testing martial law in Bourbon Street? Only in America do we use Mardi Gras as a focus group for authoritarianism. Skylar, necessary or authoritarian cosplay?
Authoritarian cosplay? No question. This isn't about safety, it's about control. New Orleans leaders said no, crime is down, but Trump wants the optics of troops on U.S. streets to show he's the law and order guy. That's not leadership, that's pageantry, and it's dangerous.
Pageantry's one thing, but if Trump wants a parade, at least let New Orleans plan it. They've got floats, beads, and brass bands ready to go. Cheaper than the Guard, too. What's the risk of sending the Guard into a city like New Orleans?
The risk is escalation. The Guard isn't trained for community nuance. They're trained for combat. Put soldiers into a festive, crowded city, and you're asking for unnecessary confrontations. Communities already feel tension with policing. Adding soldiers just raises the stakes and the temperature.
Yeah, the only thing New Orleans needs escalated is the size of the daiquiri cups. Swap Humvees for hand grenades full of frozen margarita mix, way more effective. So what's your alternative?
Strengthen what's working. Invest in community programs, fund local policing reforms, and actually listen to residents. The Guard is a blunt instrument. New Orleans needs precision, not intimidation. If the goal is safe streets, then invest in the people who live on them.
Invest in people, not Humvees. Skylar, you're describing common sense, which means Congress will reject it on principle. Chief Justice Roberts' camp is out here reminding everyone that the court shouldn't be politicized, which is hilarious considering half the country already thinks the court is basically Congress in robes. At a judicial conference this week, his advisor basically said Roberts wants the justices to steer clear of politics. Translation: please stop noticing us while we hand down rulings that reshape your life. So, panel, can the court really stay above politics? Or is this just damage control dressed in a black robe? Brian, can Roberts actually keep the court out of politics?
Not a chance, Artie. The court's been in the political crosshairs forever. But here's the thing. It's not the court politicizing itself. It's the left that keeps treating the Constitution like it's a choose-your-own-adventure book. Trump's nominees gave us a court that finally respects the law, not feelings. Roberts is just trying to calm the waters, but the truth is the left hates losing in court, so they scream about politicization. If the rulings went their way, they'd call it justice. Since they don't, they call it corruption.
So basically, Brian, you're saying the court is like a referee. Fair when it calls in your favor, blind and corrupt when it doesn't. If that's the case, half the country owes their TV a new remote after last term. So is Roberts being weak or wise here?
I think he's being careful, maybe too careful. Roberts doesn't want the court seen as partisan, but the truth is, the law has consequences. If following the Constitution means Democrats lose cases, that's not bias, that's reality. Roberts tiptoes because he wants the institution respected, but the left will never respect it as long as it stands in their way.
Careful, Brian. If Roberts tiptoes anymore, he's going to end up with blisters. Maybe he should just embrace it. The court is political, it just wears better costumes. Bottom line, is the court political?
No, the court applies the law. Politics is what happens when people don't like the outcome. The Constitution doesn't care about feelings, and neither should the justices. If people want different results, they should change laws, not bully the court.
Brian, I agree the Constitution doesn't care about feelings, but I'd bet money Daniel's about to say it cares about secret handshakes at Yale. Rachel, Roberts says don't politicize the court. You buying it?
Nope. The court is already politicized, and pretending otherwise insults people's intelligence. Appointments are political. Confirmation hearings are political. The court doesn't live in a vacuum. When rulings consistently split along ideological lines, people aren't crazy for thinking politics is driving it. Roberts wants to protect the court's image, but that ship sailed years ago.
So, Rachel, you're saying the court is like Congress, but with fancier chairs? Fair point. At least in Congress, they admit they're bought and sold. So what should Roberts be doing differently?
He should be honest. Admit the court is influenced by politics and commit to transparency. Don't lecture Americans about not seeing what's right in front of them. People aren't mad because the court exists. They're mad because it feels like 9 unelected people are steering the country without accountability. Honesty builds trust, not fairy tales about neutrality.
Honesty in Washington? Rachel, if Roberts tried that, the Supreme Court bar would faint and the Capitol would catch fire. Let's not give them ideas. How do independents read this?
Independents are exhausted. They see the court as another partisan battlefield, and they don't trust either side to fix it. Roberts pretending it's not political just adds fuel. What people want is integrity, not lectures.
Integrity in politics is like finding a sober tourist in New Orleans. Rare and usually gone by noon. Daniel, what's your conspiracy board take?
Artie, The judiciary is the final firewall for the system. If you control the courts, you don't need votes, you don't need Congress, you just need 5 robed elites. Roberts is the PR guy, telling us not to worry while the real deals happen behind closed doors. You think billionaires and lobbyists aren't leaning on justices? Please. They don't even bother hiding it anymore.
So you're saying Roberts is basically the court's customer service rep? Press 1 for denial of certiorari, press 2 for secret donor dinners. But Daniel, isn't Roberts just trying to protect the institution?
Protect the brand, you mean? Institutions don't survive on purity. They survive on perception. Roberts knows if people stop believing the court is neutral, the whole system cracks. So he puts on this Boy Scout act pretending the court is above it all, while in reality, it's one of the most powerful political tools in the country.
Boy Scout Act? If Roberts was a scout, the merit badge would be in keeping a straight face while gaslighting the public. So what should we watch for?
Watch the big money cases: energy, tech, surveillance. If the rulings keep lining up with corporate donors, that's your smoking gun. And watch retirements. Justices stepping down when it suits one party's timeline, not the people's. That's not independence. That's strategy.
So Daniel, you're basically saying Lady Justice isn't blind. She's just wearing designer shades paid for by lobbyists. Can't say I disagree. Skylar, Roberts says don't politicize the court. What's your take?
It's laughable. The court is already politicized from the ground up. Just look at how justices are nominated and confirmed. It's party line warfare. The rulings affect real people, but the decisions are driven by ideology. Pretending otherwise doesn't help the court. It hurts public trust.
Skylar, if Roberts hears you, he'll probably send you a copy of the Constitution with "Please clap" written on the cover. What would real reform look like?
Term limits. Strong ethics rules. Transparency in funding. The court should reflect accountability, not lifelong political trophies. As long as justices are insulated from consequences, it'll always tilt toward the powerful.
Term limits? Skylar, careful. Half of Congress just choked on their ensure hearing that. Limits are their kryptonite. So bottom line, court above politics or not?
Not even close. The court is politics in robes. The only question is whether we're willing to admit it. If we want real justice, we have to demand reforms, not fairy tales from Roberts.
Politics in robes, which explains why the robes are black. It hides the stains from all the backroom deals.
Let me tell you something. America's tired of weakness. We're tired of politicians who think leadership means apologizing to the world while our streets rot and our borders bleed. Trump's the only one who gets it. Strength doesn't mean endless wars. It means decisive action. It means sending a message so loud your enemies don't dare test you again. And that's why the left hates him. Because he proves their excuses are garbage. They say crime is down in New Orleans. Ask the people living there if they feel safer. They say the court is politicized only because they can't rig it anymore. This is the moment where America decides, do we stand tall, unapologetic, and unafraid? Or do we crawl back into the swamp and let the elites run the show? MAGA isn't a slogan. It's the fire that says we're done being ignored. We're taking our country back, one fight at a time.
You want to know the common thread between Venezuela, New Orleans, and the Supreme Court? Control. In Venezuela, it's about controlling resources and trade routes. In New Orleans, it's about normalizing the presence of troops on American streets. And in the Supreme Court, it's about controlling how much power corporations and elites can wield without anyone stopping them. Follow the money, follow the panic, follow the coincidences that aren't coincidences. When you zoom out, it's one big flowchart of elites protecting their power while the public fights over the scraps. That's why Roberts says, don't politicize the court. That's why they whisper about guerrilla wars, but push ahead anyway. And that's why New Orleans suddenly needs troops despite falling crime. It's all about setting precedents, not policies. You can laugh at the red yarn, but it connects. And when it connects, you see the whole picture. A system built to protect itself, not you.
Here's the hard truth. None of this is really about you. The strike in Venezuela isn't about protecting families. It's about posturing. The guard in New Orleans isn't about safety. It's about optics. And Robert's telling us not to politicize the court. That's just about preserving legitimacy for an institution that's already lost public trust. Americans are smart enough to see the pattern. Powerful people make decisions that impact our lives. Then lecture us for noticing the politics behind it. That's the red pill. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. The system isn't built to protect regular people. It's built to manage them. And the more we let politicians sell us fairy tales about neutral courts and limited interventions, the more we lose. Justice, safety, freedom. They're not theater props. They're supposed to be real, but the system won't give them to you willingly. You have to demand them.
Every one of these stories shows what happens when systems fail people. Venezuela, a strike that looks tough but ignores the poverty and corruption that created the cartel power in the first place. New Orleans, troops for a photo op instead of real investment in communities that need opportunity, not Humvees. The court, 9 people in robes making ideological decisions that affect millions, while pretending politics isn't in the room. You want real justice. Fix the roots, not the branches. Invest in people, not optics. Hold leaders accountable, not just when it's convenient, but when it costs them something. And for the love of sanity, stop pretending symbolism equals substance. Because at the end of the day, a missile, a soldier, or a ruling doesn't solve the systemic rot. Only reform, accountability, and investment in people can. And if that sounds radical, it's only because the system has made basic common sense look like a revolution.
And hey, before we close out tonight's ride, let's talk about how you can keep this show running strong. The Data and Dissonance merch line isn't just about slapping a logo on stuff. It's about making a statement. We've got coffee for every mood. High Lakes Light Roast if you need to wake up to the smell of common sense. Rock Creek Medium Roast if you like your politics balanced but your coffee bold. And Bitterroot Dark Roast if you want it darker than CNN's ratings. But it doesn't stop at the mug. We've got the mugs too. Tumblers that keep your drink hot long enough to survive a filibuster and cold long enough to survive a Texas summer. And shirts? Yeah, we've got those. Patriotic Gen X bold, the kind of threads that get nods at the barbecue and eye rolls at the faculty lounge. Exactly how we like it. Get yours today at dataanddissonance.printify.me. Every sip, every shirt, every tumbler keeps this conversation alive and lets you say what the mainstream won't. Tonight's Patriot Minute goes out to every man and woman in uniform, past, present, and future, who stands watch while politicians in suits play their games. Whether it's sailors intercepting cartel ships, guardsmen training in case they're called up, or veterans at home carrying the weight of sacrifice long after the cameras left. You are the backbone of this nation. Politicians posture, pundits chatter, but it's you who shoulder the burden. We honor your service, your sacrifice, and your families who walk that road with you. In a time when institutions crumble and leaders lie, your integrity reminds us what real patriotism looks like. America owes you more than thanks. But tonight, you have ours. All right, one last lap around the table. Panel, what do we take away from this week's circus?
America needs strength, not hesitation. Whether it's Venezuela, crime in our cities, or the court, weakness invites chaos. Trump shows strength, decisive, unapologetic, clear. That's what people want, and that's what this country needs. The left can cry about politicization all they want, but the truth is, the Constitution doesn't bend to feelings, and America doesn't bow to cartels. This week proved one thing. MAGA is the firewall against a system that keeps failing us.
Strength without accountability is just theater. Venezuela needs clear limits, New Orleans needs trust, and the court needs honesty. What we keep getting instead are headlines, optics, and lectures that don't match reality. Americans are tired of being told not to believe their eyes. The truth is, politics bleeds into everything. And until leaders respect the people enough to admit that, trust will keep eroding. Survivors deserve justice. Communities deserve investment, and citizens deserve truth. That's not partisanship, that's basic integrity.
Here's the through line. Nobody wants to admit. It's all about control. Venezuela, New Orleans, the court, different stories, same system. Follow the money, follow the power, and you'll see the same elites protecting their grip. The strike wasn't about justice, the Guard isn't about safety, and Roberts isn't about neutrality. They're all about reinforcing the walls of the system. The red yarn doesn't lie. When you connect the dots, you see the picture. And it's not flattering. It's a fortress built for them, not us.
And for me, it comes down to people over pageantry. Missiles don't solve systemic rot. Soldiers don't replace community investment, and robes don't erase politics. Every one of these stories shows how the system chooses image over substance. If we want real change, we need reform, accountability, and investment in people, not just gestures that look good on TV. The powerful will always pick pageantry. It's up to us to demand more.
And there it is. 3 stories, 1 theme. Power dressed up as protection. In Venezuela, it's a strike dressed up as strength. In New Orleans, it's troops dressed up as safety. And in Washington, it's robes dressed up as neutrality. But underneath, it's the same game. Control. Brian sees strength, Rachel sees theater, Daniel sees the machinery behind the curtain, and Skylar sees the system failing people. And me? I see a country that has a choice: demand the truth or settle for pageantry. This is Data and Dissonance. We don't settle. Remember to speak truth. Stir thought.